morning or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So a warm welcome to this webinar, and thank you very much for joining us, because I know it's not easy. With time zones, with all the difficult work and everything, it's not easy. So I'm going to share a little bit about our online learning and digital assessment at HKBU. It's a sharing, so it's not meant to be, it's what we have been doing for this entire academic year, I would say. So this is a brief outline of what I'm going to talk about, starting with some challenges, some institutional response, sharing of our experience on e-learning and e-assessment, and then perhaps a little bit of looking into the future. Okay, if this is a normal conference, I would actually have a few slides introducing my university and introducing Hong Kong. But this is a webinar, and we actually cut short all our presentations. So it's not a good idea to spend too many slides just on the introduction of the institution. Suffice to say that Hong Kong Baptist University is one of the 8 government-funded institutions, higher education institutions in Hong Kong. We have a very long friendship and partnership with the United Board, and I'm really honored to be invited here to share our experience with you. And we have been very good friends with Kevin Banu, Dave Marshall in Silliman University, so and also Christiana in Lady Dawk College in India. So very well acquainted. Now, this is our strategic plan for 2018 to 2028. So it's a 10-year plan rolled out in the fall of 2018. And as you can see, our first priority, or first strategy, is best student experience. And we want our graduates to be creative, caring, and ethical leaders who will contribute to the development of Hong Kong and the region. And obviously, in the best of times, these are tall orders, you know, having your graduates being good for the society. But in the academic year 2019-20, this tall order is actually becoming very difficult. So let's go to the challenges. It's really particularly bad for Hong Kong. In COVID-19 hit in 2020, but in 2019 we were already, when the academic year starts, we were already in social unrest, and for the last 2 weeks of the semester, we could not access our campus at all. So suddenly we're thrown into a situation that either we just don't do anything, or we have to do something very quickly. So very quickly, we talk to colleagues, we discuss with colleagues and say, either you do your thing synchronously or asynchronously, but you must help your student continue to learn. And of course, towards the end of the semester, people are thinking about examinations. Now, I don't know about your institutions. At HKBU, the normal is still this big exam at the final of the semester, at the end of the semester, when you get all the students into a big hall and you administer the exam. So suddenly you have to rethink that, because they couldn't come to campus. So take-home exam, open book exams, the rules are making it more flexible for people to adjust their examinations. So we thought, okay, we learned from that. The crisis was managed, and we planned ourselves for semester 2. So we said we mustn't forget. So let's have a e-learning fortnight in semester 2 in February after the Chinese New Year, and then we will actually practice this. Everything goes online, and we get used to this so that we are not caught by surprise again. The point is, don't get caught by surprise. And then, of course, we know what happened. We never came back in February. In the end, basically, the virus took over, and we have not been teaching since February 2020, face-to-face. Luckily, our university thrown into a response situation very quickly, because since we already feel that we have to prepare for the fortnight, we actually tried our best to respond. So in early February, 11th February, I think, considering we just came back from Chinese New Year, at the end of January. On the 11th of February, our president issued a email to all HKPU, the entire HKPU community, saying that all face-to-face classes will be suspended until further notice. And very quickly, a website showing how the COVID-19 has been spreading in Hong Kong and other parts of the world was mounted to actually alert colleagues and students that this is a serious issue. Of course, the president said no classes only, but they never say no learning. They never said we don't have to come to work. So our VP Teaching and Learning issued a more detailed email on the 13th of February, basically telling all of us that classes will continue online, and we can use asynchronous or synchronous mode to conduct the classes, and we must adhere to the Penn University standards. That means that you don't just throw your PowerPoint onto Moodle and let your student lose on it. Basically, the minimum is to actually have a voice over your PowerPoint, ask questions, to actually have some discussion. But of course, we expected colleagues to do more, and they did. In the synchronous classes, we are hoping that, or we are actually requesting colleagues to follow the class timetable. I'll go into that a little bit later when I talk about e-learning, because it's actually quite important to follow the class timetable. Some of your question was asking how to motivate students and things like that. Now, in terms of grade, it's also important that rather than just adhering strictly to the usual, we actually allow for the students as well as the teachers to decide whether in this semester their assignment or their grades will be basically pass-fail, or they will continue to have marks and so on. That will actually provide some kind of flexibility, especially for the junior years when they do not have to count towards the grade point average. Now, this end of semester has been extended, fixed on 28th of May for all content classes. Some of our classes obviously have labs, have studios, those have special arrangement, but basically all content classes, including assessment, must finish by 28th of May, and the graduation approval has to be given. IT is important, so our IT office upgrade the network to make sure that it can actually withstand the intensified traffic. Upgrade Moodle and VPN, because many of our students are not in Hong Kong, they're mainland China and all around the world. Upgraded VPN will allow our students in mainland China in particular to come to class online and submit the work online easily. Site licenses. Kevin was talking about using free versions of Zoom or anything, but no, we actually subscribe to site licenses so that everybody can have, both staff and students can make use of any of these to help themselves and help the students to learn. And of course, I like to make some mobile version of things to actually track our people coming onto campus. In terms of support and training, this is my remit, or my department's remit, and we put up a lot of sharing workshops, and they're all online. The good thing about sharing workshops online is that your teachers, our teachers, while they are still learning this, they see what's it like to be a student. So they learn from a student's perspective to see what's happening in running a workshop or a class on Zoom, and then they can revive that or duplicate that online for their students. So this is a good tactic, number one. The second good tactic is go back. Oops. Okay. The second good tactic is to actually share by peer learning or peer sharing. Now we are going into the e-learning part, so maybe I will elaborate a little bit of what we have done here. We actually put a lot of useful pedagogies, or we actually discuss with colleagues what are the useful pedagogies to put online. And as I shared just now with our slide here, we actually put up a lot of workshops. But a lot of these workshops are actually run by colleagues. So they are what we call peer sharing. The idea is that if colleagues see that another colleagues have done it, they can do it themselves. They can adopt and adapt. And we have one colleague who actually came to share in one of these workshops, and she proclaimed herself to be the most technical, inept person in the department. And she kept on telling people that if I can do it in my department, if I can do it, all of you can do it. And of course, everybody laughed, but that was really a very good example of peer sharing. The other thing is that we actually put up a website, all the tips, as you can see, tips on using Zoom, Echo 360, PowerPoint, all the workshop sharing. We put them into one website, and colleagues can come here and get at it, the relevant information. Now, some colleagues were asking, what are the best practices in terms of using synchronous online teaching? So we actually gathered some tips from everyone, and we put them together. So things like, don't start just on time, start earlier, just like what Kevin did, and go through some of the things with your students. Make sure that they are comfortable with using Zoom before you start the class properly. Those are the things that we actually shared with colleagues. And one thing about, I promised to talk about the sharing of the running according to the class schedule. Some of the questions was asking, how do we actually motivate students to come to class? Now, if you actually do it according to the class schedule, then they have basically no excuse as such. This is when you actually have to come to class, so you start. Obviously, we have to make allowances for people who are not in Hong Kong. So in terms of time differences, we have to make allowances, and that's why we always recommend recording the Zoom session so that you can put them on back into Moodle, so students who have to miss it because it's the middle of the night for them, they can still go back. The other thing about being about class schedule is that even for morning classes, 8:30 classes where students usually don't want to come in, they will actually log on to Zoom. One of our colleagues shared that a student told her that I don't want to turn my video on because I'm still in bed. And the colleague said, as long as you are participating, I don't mind that you're still in bed and you're awake. And then the student promised, and she did participate. So those are some of the nice things about following class schedule. But as I mentioned, you also have to be careful about time zones. We actually also have adopted some activities that we usually done physically for online purposes. Now, the usual response, things like Kahoot, Mentimeter, or even just the usual non-verbal responses in Zoom are all working. So you can make use of those within Zoom to actually maintain the interaction even though you're online. What we also have done is to actually change one of our augmented reality trails, or some of them, from a physical setting to a virtual one. We are very proud of this project because the UB has supported us and working together with Banu and also Dave Marshall in Silliman University in the Philippines, we actually have scheduled to create physical trails in Marian College and also in Silliman. But of course, we couldn't travel. But luckily, Silliman managed the physical trail. And by adopting this one online, we still have the map, we actually make use of it. We are actually quite successful locally to bring this online. And thanks to the cooperation with Banu, his colleagues and students are trying it this week on an online version of this augmented reality trail. So we will be able to report what happened later. And if you want to try it, please do join us. Because now, as the semester moves on, we found that our colleagues are getting very comfortable with e-learning. But what about assessment? I mean, as I mentioned earlier, many of our colleagues are still thinking about okay, I can wait until the situations get better, we gather the students in and do the big exams. Now, they were thinking about it in February, and we told them that, you know, wishful thinking, it will not happen. They were thinking about it in March, again, wishful thinking, not happen. They were also thinking about it in April, but of course we said that it's actually better not to bank on the final exam. So the recommendation for them, for our colleagues, and many of them have done this really well, is to break up their assignments into smaller chunks, their assessment in smaller chunks, making use of both online and offline situation, count participation, a presentation, you can do short quizzes, you can do writing, take-home exams, open book exams, and portfolios. The concept is that you don't have a gigantic assessment at the end, and everybody has to come into the same room and do it at the same time. You allow the student to learn as they progress. So assessment for learning and as learning, and the situation here caused by COVID-19 has forced us almost into this situation. And our colleagues have been adopting the 2 hours essay into shorter hours, giving time to handle the online situation, making sure the connectivity is okay, a short definitive time to work, and then for submission. We actually also recommend colleagues to change their rubrics and weightings of examination. Now, one of our courses, we actually have changed over the weighting. The participation becomes more heavy because now we actually expect them to work online. And when they come to the online classes, we have what we call formative exercise. We have breakout rooms to ask them to do their discussion as a group. We actually have Kahoot for ask them to answer questions. We actually have worksheets to ask them to work on the things individually. Now, all of those are what we call formative. They're not counting towards the final grade. But on the other hand, by participating in them, it counts towards the final grade. So one way or another, we are helping our students by the participation to help them with a major activity of delivering a teaching and learning activity or major assessment. In terms of assessment, our colleagues have been very innovative. Let me stop here and also go back to here and share a screen with you on assessment. Yeah. Okay, these are some of the examples of assessment tasks conducted online, from participation, individual or group presentation, essay assignment. Okay, so what they actually allow the student to submit by QQ or VChat, just to make sure that they actually can get at the answers and submit them. Midterm tests, making them short, making them not too heavy, making multiple questions, shorter duration, but more of them. And even with a final examination, we have a colleague who actually tried this out, not called final, in terms of a midterm. So the first 30 minutes to help students set up. And then in 1 hour in the middle, they release the question to the students and ask them to do it there and then. So within the hour, the students have to complete the assignment or the examination. So the choice there is, okay, do I go and copy and find and cheat, or do I work on my exams? I mean, a lot of the students decide to work on the exam because it's 1 hour, the opportunity cost is too large to go and cheat. And then finally, the last 30 minutes, go and check that the student can have finished and submit, and come to us for help if there is any problem with the submission, because we can actually go behind the scenes and check. So those are some of the things that our colleagues have done, and we actually wrote them up and put them as tips to share with everyone in the university. And before I move on to the next, yeah, nearly there.
Yeah, I don't want to interject too much, but if you wouldn't mind just sharing, I think you're on your final slide here, so if you wouldn't mind sharing some of the resources that people might be able to access.
Okay, I will on my final slide, then I'll go back to the screen and click onto that. All right,
Great.
Okay.
Great.
So here we go. That's our assessment. I think before I actually go into the final slide, one of the things I want to talk about the assessment, our Chinese medicine, because some of you were asking if I have a lot of physical classes like labs and have to do things, how do I actually help the students? Our Chinese medicine class, I mean, they are like medicine. They actually need a lot of physical class. But our colleagues are very ingenious. They actually make use of Zoom to show them what the acupuncture points, and then by showing them the acupuncture points and how to handle them in Zoom, and then they make each and every student duplicate that exercise online immediately in front of them and comment on what they have done. And in terms of examination, they did a mock oral examination because Chinese medicine students have to take oral examination as well as written ones. And that actually they actually make a mock oral examination using Zoom and breakout rooms. So that worked out to be very successful. At this point, it's actually good to talk about the future. And it's good to talk about the future if we go back to the past and past about examinations. I was actually thinking about what we should be doing for, now that we have all these things, what we should be doing. And I was thinking, with us Chinese, we are very used to big examinations. This is our bread and butter. Because back in the year 605, we already started imperial examinations where we actually put lots of students in a big hall and run examinations and ask them to write until their hands freeze up. And yet in the 21st century, we continue to do so. Our Hong Kong Diploma of Secondary Education examination or diploma education was introduced in 2010, the big revamp of our education system, but the final big exam remains. In fact, on the 24th of April, last week, because our situation, touch wood, has improved a lot, the examination has resumed. So we have big 40,000 students in big halls having examination on Monday for a major course. So it continues. And then of course, this is, I'm sure this is a familiar classroom in our universities before COVID-19. End of exam, gather them or in the classroom and do examination. But is this the only way to do? Is this the only assessment? What are we doing about the future? What is the future like? Well, two things for sure. I don't know the future. I can't read into the future, right? Two things for sure. E-learning and e-assessment are here to stay, whether we like it or not. It's not going to disappear. And we must learn from this experience and move forward. So in our university, what we have been talking about is, okay, if people are still wanting their big exams, we still have to streamline the exam. We have to make sure that they are already ready online, and we have to think about how do we actually move the exams online? What do we do about proctoring and all those? So we are looking into that, planning for that for the next academic year, that we actually, it's time to rethink the exam, apart from the fact that they should not be the only assessment, the only single big assessment. And we're also thinking about a paradigm shift, really, assessment for learning, assessment as learning. The new normal is not going to be the same because we have experienced COVID-19. So we have to rethink our assessment. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention and perhaps go back to what I shared just now here. We actually, in my screen, I actually have a, perhaps I'll go here. In my PowerPoint, I actually have a link for this e-learning support page that is actually open to all our colleagues. Now, anything that is clickable and openable is already on this page. So anything that we actually need to lock down, we have locked down. So the link here and is also in the PowerPoint. So you're welcome to come to this page here and just look at the resources we have make available to our colleagues. The ones that I shared with you about recommended practice for online learning is here. Examples of assessment tasks, we have logged this example, but if you would like it, please let us know, and we are happy to share a PDF with you or individually, or I may actually send it to Kevin for you to use. Things like how to use breakout rooms, how to share audio, Echo 360. So all of these are open, and even for Zoom security for students. I mean, basically, we are actually responding to a lot of worries from our colleagues. So these are the things that we are happy to share with colleagues.